I moved to Siargao, alone at 66. One suitcase, no wife, no friends, waiting. And I was dead certain I'd be the odd man out on a young surf island. Before I tell you how it went for me, do me one quick favor. Subscribe and hit that like. It honestly makes my day over here. Now, let me tell you what I pictured on that flight over. Lonely dinners, just me and a plate. A rented room with a ceiling fan turning slow above my head. 20-year-old surfers on the boardwalk, tanned and easy, half a century younger than me, with nothing in the world we'd ever have to say to each other. I figured I'd last a few months. I'd sit there counting the weeks until I gave up, packed that same suitcase, and flew home with my tail between my legs. If you've ever pictured doing this alone and felt your stomach tighten, stay with me. That was me on that airstrip, gripping my bag. Sure, I'd made a mistake, but here's the thing. One evening, walking that sunset beach path back from town, something happened that turned the whole move around. It's the reason I'm still here 4 years later. I'll get to it, it's the whole point, but you need the beginning first. So, picture the plane. A little one, the kind that lands on a grass strip cut out of the coconut palms. The door opens and the heat wraps around you like a warm towel, thick and green and smelling of salt. I stepped down onto Siargao with one suitcase and nobody to hand it to. The other passengers had people waiting, somebody hugging them, somebody carrying a board, and me standing there in my travel clothes sweating, thinking, well, old man, you've done it now. A tricycle driver waved me over. Boyette, his name was, a wiry fellow in a faded Lakers cap that had seen 100 washings. He tossed my bag in the sidecar like it weighed nothing, grinned, and off we went, rattling and buzzing down a road lined with palms, heading into General Luna. Boyette talked the whole way. Where you from, sir? First time? You surf? I laughed and told him no, I came for the quiet. He just smiled and kept driving, weaving past chickens and motorbikes and kids on bicycles, and I held onto my bag like it was the last thing tying me to the life I'd left. And what a life that was to leave. I'd done the American thing for 40 years. The commute, the meetings, the bills stacked on the kitchen counter, and those winters, good Lord, those long gray winters where the sky closes over in November and doesn't open up again until April. You wake up in the dark, you drive home in the dark. The cold gets into your knees and it doesn't leave. I'd stand at my window some February morning, watching the salt trucks go by, and I'd think, there has to be more than this. I didn't want to spend my last good years shoveling snow off a driveway nobody visited, so I chased the warmth. And I chased it alone, because I'd rather be alone in the sun than alone in the cold, and that's the honest truth of why I got on that plane. Now, that first tricycle ride, Boyette weaving through General Luna, it taught me something in about 10 minutes. The sunshine, the visa, the money in the bank, none of that is the hard part. I'll tell you what the hard part really is. It's not knowing anything, which street is friendly and which one's just for tourists, which little corner store to walk into, which barangay a fellow like me actually fits in. What small daily habits make a stranger start to feel like he belongs? Nobody hands you that. You learn it the slow way, and the slow way costs you months and a fair bit of money. That's exactly why I sat down and put all of it, everything I learned the slow, expensive way over 4 years here, into one plain-spoken guide I call One-Way Guide. The real rent figures, the SRRV deposit numbers, how the healthcare actually works, and most of all, the little things nobody warns you about, the streets and the habits that make an island start to feel like home. If you're serious about doing this without 4 years of guessing, that's the shortcut I wish somebody had handed me at that airstrip. The link's down in the description. Anyway, my first week, Boyette's cousin knew a fellow who had a small concrete house for rent 2 streets back from Cloud 9. If you know Siargao at all, you know Cloud 9, the boardwalk, the wave, the surfers lined up out on the water at dawn. My little place was just far enough back to be quiet. Bare walls, a tin roof, a ceiling fan, a bathroom with a bucket. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. And that first evening, sitting on my own step, I smelled grilled fish drifting up from a carinderia down by the sand. Motorbikes rattled past on the road out front, one after another, that steady buzz you stop hearing after a while. This wasn't a postcard anymore. This was real. This was where I live now. So I had it. The house I'd flown across the world for. The warmth on my skin every single morning. The quiet. Everything on my list checked off. And still, at 3 in the morning, when the rain came down and hammered on that tin roof like a drummer who wouldn't quit, I'd lie there wide awake, staring at the fan turning in the dark, feeling like a stranger who'd wandered into somebody else's paradise. I had the sunshine. I just didn't have a single soul. Except there was this one small woman, blue house address, down at the little Sorry store on my corner, selling bananas and pain de sal. Every time I passed, she'd wave me over. And every time, for weeks, I'd just nod, force a little smile, and keep on walking. Her name was Nene Elsa. I learned it slowly, the way you learn most things on this island a little at a time, from people who never rush you. A small woman in a faded blue house dress, standing behind the counter of the little Sorry store on my corner, with green bananas hanging by the door and warm pain de sal in a plastic bin that fogged up in the morning heat. Every single day she'd catch my eye and wave me over. And every single day I'd give her that polite American nod, the one that means thank you and no thank you all at once, and I'd keep on walking toward the beach. Now, let me be straight with you about what those first weeks were really like. Because the sunshine was real, but so was the friction. The power out here has a mind of its own. I'd be halfway through frying an egg and the whole house would just go dark brownouts that last 2 hours. Sometimes right in the middle of the hottest part of the afternoon. The first time it happened, I stood there in the dark like a fool. By the third time, I'd learned. I bought a little battery lamp, set it on the kitchen table, and I'd sit there in that soft glow and wait it out. That's the island teaching you its rhythm. It isn't the postcard. It's better, honestly, but only once you stop fighting it. And I learned where things were, where to buy rice, where the good fish came in, which tricycle drivers wouldn't overcharge the new guy. Let me give you the real numbers, because I know that's what you're doing math on right now. My little concrete house, 2 streets back from the water in General Luna, I paid 12,000 pesos a month for it. That's about $210. For a whole house near the beach. Back home, that wouldn't cover 1 week in a roadside motel. A tricycle ride into town ran me 50 pesos, under $1, for the kind of trip that'd be a $15 rideshare in the States. And a full plate at the beachside Carinderia grilled fish, rice, a cold drink, 120 pesos. Call it $2 and change. $2 for dinner with the ocean right there in front of you. So the money worked. The house worked. On paper, I had everything I flew across the world to get. But here's the part I'm not proud of. I decided, somewhere in my own head, that a man my age had no business out here. This is a surf island, you understand. 20-year-olds with sun-bleached hair and boards under their arms. I looked at all that young energy and I told myself, that's not your crowd, old-timer. Eat your dinner, mind your business, don't be the sad old man crowding in where he isn't wanted. So I ate alone. And I told myself that was just how it was going to be. If you're the type who'd keep to yourself out of politeness, thinking you'd only be in the way, I need you to hear how wrong I had it. Because I wasn't being polite. I was being scared and dressing it up as good manners. Every evening it was the same. I'd walk back from town along the beach path as the sun went down, and I'd pass the little Carinderia on the sand where they grill fish over the coals. That smell, you can't describe it to somebody who hasn't stood in it. Grilled fish drifting up through the smoke, motorbikes rattling past behind me, kids shrieking and splashing in the last of the light. There'd be a cluster of people around a plastic table, laughing, passing bottles, and I'd walk right by the edge of it like a man looking at a lit window from out in the cold, close enough to feel the warmth. Never once stepping in. And Nene Elsa, she would not quit. Rain or shine, there she'd be at that corner store, waving, calling something friendly I only half caught. Sometimes she'd hold up a banana or point at the fresh pain de sal like, come, sit, eat. And I kept doing my nod and walk. What I didn't know, what I had absolutely no idea about, was that behind that counter, that small woman in the blue house dress had already made up her mind about me. She'd decided I was hers to look after, and she'd been talking, quietly, to half the barangay about the quiet American on the corner who never smiled long enough. I didn't know any of that. I just knew there was a lonely stretch of evenings and a plate of food eaten by myself at a small table, and the rain coming down on my tin roof at 3 in the morning while I lay there wondering, some nights, if I'd made a mistake I was too stubborn to admit. Tell me you've never talked yourself out of saying yes to somebody, because that's exactly what I'd been doing for weeks. Somebody reaches out, and you find a reason. You're tired? You'd be intruding. You'll say yes next time. And next time turns into a month. Then came the evening that broke the pattern. I'd been into General Luna to sort out a few things, and I was worn thin, tired in my bones, tired of my own company, walking that same beach path home with the sun going orange over the water and the motorbikes buzzing past. And there was Elsa at her corner, right where she always was. She called out, same as every other day. But this time I don't fully know why I stopped. Maybe I was just too tired to keep pretending I didn't hear her. Maybe some part of me was done being the man at the edge of the lit window. Whatever it was, my feet quit walking, and I turned, and I actually looked at her. For weeks I'd walked past that woman, and on this one ordinary sunset, on the beach path home, lonely and worn down and finally out of excuses, I stopped when Elsa called my name. And what she had quietly arranged down on the sand, without ever breathing one word of it to me, was about to undo every single thing I thought I knew about being alone at 66. So I stopped. I turned toward the sound of her voice, and Elsa, in that blue house dress, just grinned and pointed past the palms, like she'd been waiting weeks for exactly this moment. And she had. I rounded the little cluster of coconut trees where the beach path opens up to the sand, and there it was. A grill, smoking away. A ring of plastic chairs, the cheap kind you see stacked outside every sorry store on the island. Half a dozen people sitting there in the last gold light of the day, and the second they saw me, they didn't go quiet the way strangers do. They waved. All of them, like I was the one they'd been holding a seat for. I stood there a second, honestly not sure it was for me. It was for me. Elsa's son June was crouched by the grill, a rag over his shoulder, grease still on his hands from fixing bikes all day. He fixes motorbikes 2 doors down, and I'd nodded at him 100 times without a word. He looked up and just said, "Come, sit, we saved you the good chair." Next to him an older local couple, the husband already pouring, and then 2 faces I didn't expect at all. 2 Americans, a man and his wife, who'd lived on this island a full decade, 10 years. They'd raised half a life here, and they leaned over and said, "We heard there was a new one on the corner. Took you long enough." Took you long enough. Like I was late to my own party. And here's the thing I need you to feel with me. If your throat tightens a little right here, good. That's the exact thing you've been afraid of, turning out to be the best part. That fear you're carrying around, the one that whispers you'll be the odd man out, the gray-haired stranger nobody wants at the table, hold on to that feeling for one more second, because I'm about to tell you what it actually became. Somebody handed me a San Miguel, warm, not cold, because the brownout had killed the little fridge again, and nobody cared one bit. John pulled a whole fish off the grill, skin blistered and black in spots, and laid it on a banana leaf. The smell of it, that grilled fish smell that had been drifting up to my lonely tin roof for weeks, only this time I was sitting right in the middle of it. Kids were tearing up and down the shoreline, kicking up water, screaming with laughter as the sun went down orange over Cloud 9. Motorbikes rattling somewhere behind us on the road. And Elsa, little Elsa. She pushed through the circle, took a plate loaded with fish and rice, and pressed it straight into my 2 hands, looked me dead in the eye and said, "You eat, you're family now." Your family now? I'm not too proud to tell you, my eyes went hot right there on the sand. A grown man of 66, 1 suitcase, no wife, no plan, and this tiny woman in a house address had just handed me a family I hadn't earned and hadn't asked for. Because here's what I finally understood, sitting in that plastic chair with a warm beer sweating in my hand. For weeks, Elsa had been telling half the barangay about the quiet American on the corner. The one who kept his head down. The one she figured was lonely, because she'd raised enough sons to know the look. She didn't wait for me to work up the nerve. She built the welcome, and then she stood on the beach path and called me into it. So, let me say the thing plain. The thing I did not expect. I came to Siargao braced to be invisible. I pictured a surf island full of 20-year-olds who'd look right through a man my age. I pictured eating alone until I gave up and flew home. And instead, on the exact island I feared would leave me a stranger, I got pulled into a circle warmer than any neighborhood I ever had back in the States. 30 years in the same American cul-de-sac, and I never once had a plate pressed into my hands like that. Never once had 6 people save me the good chair. I belonged here faster at 66 than I ever belonged back home. Let that land, because it flips everything you've been told about starting over late. And it wasn't a one-night thing. That's what I want you to hear. That circle on the sand is still my family, 4 years on. June still fixes my bike and won't take the right money for it. The old couple has me over for their grandkids' birthdays. Those 2 American expats, the tenure folks, they walked me through my whole SRRV retirement visa over a couple of San Miguel's, told me which lines to stand in and which to skip. And Elsa, every single morning, hands me my pan de sal before I've even said good morning. Now, listen to me, because this is the part that's really for you. Everybody who dreams about this move gets stuck on the wrong wall. They lie awake doing math. They worry about the rent, the power bill, the peso, the SRRV deposit. And look, those numbers matter. I've laid mine out for you plain and honest, and they add up to a good life on far less than you'd need back home. But the money was never the real hurdle. The visa was never the real hurdle. I sorted all of that with a little homework and a couple of afternoons. The real wall is quieter than that. It's the fear of walking in alone. It's lying in the dark wondering if a man your age will ever find his people on the other side of the world. So tell yourself the truth tonight. Is it the money stopping you, or is it the fear of walking in alone? Be honest with yourself, just for a minute, because I promise you, your circle is already out there. There's an Elsa on some corner right now, watching for the quiet newcomer, already deciding your family before you've said a word. The hardest part of moving to Siargao alone isn't the money, and it isn't the paperwork. It's believing you'll find your people. And you will, quicker than you think. That beach path, the one I dreaded walking home alone at sunset, worn down and sure I'd made a mistake, I still walk it every evening. Only now, I'm not hurrying past anyone. I'm stopping. I'm the one calling out to the new face. The warmth is waiting on that path. Grilled fish, warm San Miguel, kids in the surf, a chair with your name on it. It's all sitting right there in the gold light at the end of the day, waiting for anyone brave enough to walk it. That could be you. Sooner than you'd ever believe.